You don't get to claim a lake just because you can see it from your kitchen window. That was the first sentence out of my mouth the morning the HOA decided my waterfront was a community amenity. The smell of charcoal and lighter fluid drifted across the water before I even finished my first cup of coffee. I remember standing barefoot on cool hardwood floors, staring through the glass doors at 6 strangers unloading folding chairs onto my dock like it had been waiting for them. The lake was calm, early sunlight skating across the surface in thin ribbons of gold, the kind of quiet you move to a place like this to protect. Then a pontoon engine coughed to life, breaking that silence like someone slamming a screen door in church. I had closed on the house 48 hours earlier. 48 hours. My name still felt new on the deed. The ink was probably still settling into the county records, and already Margaret Whitmore and her Willow Creek Estates HOA had decided they were stakeholders in my shoreline. Maggie stepped onto the planks like she owned the grain in the wood, white linen blouse crisp, sunglasses perched like a badge of suburban authority. Behind her, 2 board members carried a cooler. One guy in boat shoes was stringing up a banner that read, "Welcome to the lake season." My lake season. The dock creaked under their weight, a low wooden groan I knew well because I'd inspected it myself before closing. Solid framing, pressure-treated lumber, private structure. I slid open the door, and the humid air wrapped around me, thick with the scent of lake water. Maggie stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was offering reasonable advice. You do not want to be the neighbor who blocks families from the lake. Think about the message that sends. There it was. Not legal argument. Not documentation. Optics. Reputation. Pressure through perception. I glanced uphill at the row of houses, vinyl siding glowing under late afternoon sun. A few residents stood in there, driveways pretending not to stare. One man gave me a small shrug, as if to say this was easier if I just went along with it. The paddleboards bumped lightly against my dock, foam scraping wood with a dull, repetitive sound. No one asked permission. They just tied off loosely, assuming proximity meant approval. Maggie tapped her clipboard again. We are drafting a community dock agreement. It will include maintenance cost sharing, liability coverage. It protects you as much as it protects us. I almost laughed at that. I design liability frameworks for a living. Protection does not come from signatures pushed through social pressure. It comes from defined boundaries and enforceable control. I walked down the last few feet of shoreline and crouched beside the electrical service box at the base of the dock. The brass key felt cool against my fingertips. I did not unlock anything. I just let it sit there in my hand, visible. Maggie's eyes followed the movement. She noticed. She always noticed details. We will be back tomorrow with the full proposal, she said finally. I suggest you review it carefully. As she turned to leave, the paddleboards remained tied in place, bobbing gently, small ripples spreading outward in quiet circles. They thought repetition would normalize it. They thought if they touched it often enough, it would feel like theirs. I stood up slowly and looked out over the water, sunlight breaking into fractured reflections across the surface. They were treating my shoreline like a suggestion. They were about to learn it was a boundary. The proposal arrived the next morning in a thick white envelope hand-delivered and wedged between my front door and the frame like a quiet warning. I found it before sunrise, dew still clinging to the grass, the lake smooth and silver under early light. The paper inside was heavy, the kind people use when they want authority to feel tangible. Willow Creek Estates Community Dock Use Agreement was printed across the top in bold letters, followed by 3 pages of language that sounded confident but hollow. I stood at my kitchen island, coffee steaming beside me, and read every line slowly. They claimed historical shared access. They referenced community reliance. They even inserted a paragraph suggesting implied easement through consistent use over time. Implied. That word again. It is remarkable how often people rely on implication when they do not have documentation. Outside, I could hear the faint metallic clink of something being set down on wood. I walked to the window and saw 2 HOA board members on my dock with a measuring wheel, rolling it along the planks like they were conducting an inspection. Maggie stood a few feet back, arms crossed, observing with the calm patience of someone who believed the outcome was already settled. A temporary laminated sign had been zip-tied to my dock railing overnight. Community Access Point A. The audacity almost impressed me. I stepped outside, the morning air cool against my skin, carrying the faint scent of wet cedar and lake minerals. You are installing signage on private property, I said evenly. Maggie did not flinch. We are designating shared infrastructure. The board has authority over amenities serving the neighborhood. I held up the agreement packet between 2 fingers. You are assuming authority where none exists. She took a slow breath, like a teacher correcting a stubborn student. Ethan, this is about harmony. Refusal to cooperate could result in formal action. Fines. Legal review. We would prefer not to escalate. There it was. The pressure shifting from friendly suggestion to procedural threat. One of the board members finished rolling the measuring wheel and called out a number, jotting it down on a clipboard. They were documenting my dock as if it were already theirs. The water lapped softly beneath the planks, small rhythmic taps that contrasted with the tension hanging in the air. I walked down to the base of the dock and crouched beside the electrical panel again. The brass key slid into the lock with a quiet, precise click. I opened the small metal door just enough to reveal the labeled switches inside. Shore power, lift controls, safety cutoff. I did not flip anything. I simply closed it again and locked it. The sound of the latch settling echoed louder than it should have. Maggie's gaze sharpened slightly. She understood that panel mattered. We will circulate the agreement for signatures tonight, she said, regaining composure. Most residents already support it. Support is not ownership. Applause is not title. I looked past her to the hill where more neighbors had gathered, some curious, some cautious. They were watching to see whether repetition would turn into control. The laminated sign fluttered lightly in the breeze, zip ties pulling against the railing. A temporary declaration on permanent wood. I stepped closer, cut the zip ties with a small pair of utility snips from my pocket, and handed the sign back to Maggie without raising my voice. "You cannot formalize what you do not legally possess," I said. The lake remained calm behind me, reflecting the sky without picking sides. But beneath that still surface, currents move according to structure. And structure, in this case, belonged to me. The certified letter arrived 3 days later, delivered by a courier truck that idled at the curb like it was dropping off something valuable. I watched from the porch as the driver walked up my path, clipboard in hand, and asked for a signature. The envelope was stamped with the logo of a regional law firm out of Charleston. Clean serif font. Expensive paper. The kind of presentation designed to make people hesitate before opening it. I signed, thanked him, and carried it inside while the lake shimmered under late afternoon sun like none of this concerned it. The letter accused me of obstructing established community access and interfering with recreational expectations tied to property value. It referenced potential litigation for damages related to denial of shared use. It cited past seasons of uncontested dock activity as evidence of precedent. I set it down next to my coffee mug and read it twice. Uncontested does not mean uncontestable. Silence is not surrender. Outside, a pontoon drifted slowly in a wide circle 20 yards off my shoreline, engine humming low, as if waiting for instruction. I could see Maggie seated at the front, sunglasses on, posture straight, performing calm. That evening, the HOA sent an email blast to every resident. I know because 3 neighbors forwarded it to me quietly. The subject line read Community Access Clarification. The message framed me as uncooperative, unwilling to contribute to shared enjoyment, resistant to harmony. They did not mention the deed. They did not mention the plat map. They did not mention the absence of recorded easement. Instead, they mentioned tradition. Tradition is persuasive when people want comfort more than accuracy. By the next morning, 2 kayaks were pulled halfway onto my grass, resting just inside the property line like an experiment. I walked down with a measuring tape and confirmed what I already knew. 12 feet beyond the boundary marker. Intentional or careless, it did not matter. Encroachment is measured the same either way. Maggie appeared shortly after, holding a printed copy of the law firm letter. "This can all be resolved easily," she said, voice smooth, almost sympathetic. "Sign the agreement. We share maintenance costs. Everyone wins." The water behind her rippled under a light breeze, sunlight scattering in broken patterns across the surface. I could hear wind chimes somewhere uphill, faint and persistent. "You are threatening litigation over property you cannot document," I replied. "That is not resolution. That is pressure." She tilted her head slightly. Pressure works when people are isolated. It was the closest she had come to honesty. I thought about the houses lining the ridge, mortgages tied to perceived amenities, resale values whispered about at dinner tables. I thought about how easily a narrative becomes truth when repeated often enough. Then I thought about the original shoreline survey folded in my desk drawer and the brass key in my pocket. "You are relying on optics," I said quietly. "I am relying on recorded rights." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The lake remained indifferent, small waves brushing against dock posts in steady rhythm. Finally, Maggie straightened her shoulders. "You have 1 week before we move forward formally," she said. The pontoon engine restarted with a low rumble, and she stepped back toward the path without looking over her shoulder. The kayak still rested on my grass, light enough to move, but heavy with implication. I left them there for the moment, not because I accepted them, but because I was measuring something larger than 12 feet of shoreline. I was measuring how far they were willing to go when they believed repetition could rewrite ownership. On the 6th morning, the lake was quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like it was holding its breath. The kayaks were gone from my grass, but faint drag lines remained in the dew, thin arcs curving back toward the paved path uphill. I stood on my porch with a legal pad in one hand and the brass key in the other, watching sunlight climb slowly over the ridge. The 1 week Maggie had given me was ticking down, and she assumed I would spend it preparing a defense. She was wrong. I was preparing a framework. I drove into town just after 9, the truck tires humming against smooth asphalt, and stopped at the county records office housed in a red brick building that smelled faintly of paper and air conditioning. I requested the original subdivision filings for Willow Creek Estates and the adjacent lake parcels. The clerk wheeled out a metal cart stacked with bound volumes and digital printouts. I have learned that most disputes are not resolved by argument, but by architecture. The way something was built tells you how it can be controlled. I spent 2 hours tracing lines on plat maps, following easements, utility corridors, and shoreline demarcations. That is when I saw it clearly. The subdivision roads terminated 20 feet short of the water at every single lot. No recorded pedestrian easement. No municipal dedication of shoreline access. The only structures physically connecting upland homes to the lake were private docks, each permitted under individual lot ownership. And mine was the only dock with an extended lateral platform wide enough to accommodate multiple vessels. Which meant something else. The pontoon that kept circling offshore did not belong to a lakefront lot. It was registered to an address uphill. I confirmed that through the county marine registry before I left. Back home by early afternoon, I walked the length of my dock slowly, counting pilings, measuring the distance between cleats, feeling the solid resistance of treated wood under my boots. The service panel hummed faintly when I unlocked it, the internal breaker lights steady and green. Shore power feeds ran exclusively from my meter. The lift motors were wired directly into my property line conduit. Every bolt, every cable, every amp of current flowed through infrastructure legally tied to my deed. The breeze carried the smell of sunscreen again as a small group gathered at the top of the hill. Maggie stood at the front, phone in hand, likely preparing another message to residents about progress and unity. I closed the panel and locked it with deliberate care. Then I walked up the gravel path and met her halfway. Before you move forward formally, I said, voice calm, you may want to review the original subdivision filings. She frowned slightly. We have legal counsel. Then have them verify whether any recorded easement grants you physical access to my shoreline. I continued. A faint murmur spread among the few neighbors within earshot. Maggie's expression tightened, just enough to register calculation. She had relied on narrative and pressure. I was introducing structure. If you interfere with dock operations or represent shared control without documentation, I added quietly, you will be interfering with private infrastructure tied directly to recorded utilities. The words were not loud, but they carried weight. Infrastructure is not emotional. It is binary, authorized or unauthorized, permitted or not. Maggie did not respond immediately. The lake behind us reflected the sky in perfect stillness, as if it already knew which side the lines were drawn on. For the first time since I moved in, I saw hesitation flicker across her face. They thought repetition would establish ownership. They had not considered that every plank beneath their feet was anchored to something far more permanent than tradition. The next move did not involve shouting, arguing, or sending another letter. It involved a clipboard of my own. 2 mornings after my conversation with Maggie, I walked the full length of my dock at 6:30 sharp, steel thermos in hand, dew still clinging to the planks. The lake was glass smooth, pale blue under a rising sun, and for a moment it felt like mine again. I unlocked the service panel and flipped the internal test switch for the ground fault circuit interrupter. The indicator light shifted from green to amber exactly as it should. I made a note. Then I inspected the lift cables, running my hand along the braided steel, checking for fray or corrosion. There was none. I crouched to examine the anchoring brackets at the shoreline connection point, confirming bolt torque against manufacturer specifications. I was not preparing for a fight. I was documenting compliance. By 8 o'clock, I had drafted a formal dock structural and electrical safety review notice addressed to Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. The language was neutral, technical, precise. As the sole permitted operator of the dock infrastructure located on Parcel 17B, I was conducting a mandatory safety compliance assessment in accordance with state marine electrical code and liability standards. During review, all unauthorized use of lift systems, shore power connections, and tie-off cleats would be temporarily suspended pending verification of user authorization and insurance coverage. No threats, no accusations, just structure. I printed copies and hand-delivered one to Maggie's front door. The ridge road curved quietly under my truck tires as sprinklers clicked on in neat suburban rhythm. When she opened the door, the smell of brewed coffee drifted out, rich and bitter. She scanned the heading once, and her jaw tightened just slightly. "You cannot shut down community access," she said. "There is no community access to shut down," I replied evenly. "There is private infrastructure undergoing compliance review." By noon, the pontoon was back offshore, idling in a slow arc like it had been doing all week. Two teenagers approached the shoreline again with paddle boards, hesitated when they saw the laminated notice now affixed to the dock entrance, and turned back uphill without argument. The breeze carried faint conversation from driveways as word spread. Temporary suspension, liability review, insurance verification. These are not emotional phrases. They are procedural. At 3 p.m, a man I had not met before walked down alone, hands in his pockets. He introduced himself as Daniel Harper, Lot 42. "I do not want trouble," he said quietly, glancing back toward the houses. "But I checked the county site after your comment the other day. There is no easement." I nodded once. "I am not blocking the lake," I said. "I am enforcing what is documented." He looked at the dock, then at the hill, then back at me. "She told everyone it was shared for years." "Shared by tolerance is not shared by right," I answered. That evening, the lake remained empty of borrowed vessels. The water lapped gently against the pilings, uninterrupted. The service panel remained locked. The lift remained powered but inactive. Nothing dramatic happened. No raised voices. No flashing lights. Just absence. And absence, in a place where routine had been mistaken for ownership, spoke louder than any argument. Maggie did not come down that day. She stayed uphill, likely recalibrating strategy. Because for the first time since I arrived, repetition had stopped working. The dock was still there. The lake was still there. But access now required something they had never produced before. Proof. The absence lasted 48 hours before the pressure shifted. On the third morning of suspended use, a folding table appeared at the top of the ridge with a handwritten sign that read HOA Emergency Meeting. I could hear the low hum of conversation drifting down the hill like distant static. Coffee cups clinked. Someone laughed nervously. The lake below remained undisturbed, smooth and reflective, as if it had already chosen neutrality. I was halfway through inspecting the secondary support beams when my phone buzzed with an email notification. Subject line, immediate action required. The board had voted unanimously to impose a daily fine for denial of community amenity access. $50 per day, escalating weekly. I read it once, then again, standing on sun-warmed planks with the scent of cedar and water rising around me. They were attempting to fine me for not providing access to something they could not document owning. It would have been amusing if it were not so predictable. I climbed back up the path and drove into town before noon, gravel crunching under my tires in steady rhythm. The clerk at the county building recognized me from earlier in the week. I requested certified copies of my deed, the subdivision plat, and the absence of any recorded shoreline easement benefiting Willow Creek Estates. 20 minutes later, I walked out with stamped documentation in a sealed envelope. Paper does not argue. It does not perform. It simply exists. That afternoon, I sent a formal response to the HOA board and their law firm, attaching the certified documents and citing the specific statutory language governing private riparian rights in this state. I outlined, in measured paragraphs, that any fine levied for refusal to grant unrecorded access constituted interference with lawful property control and potential misrepresentation of authority. I did not threaten. I referenced. By early evening, Daniel Harper knocked on my door. The air smelled faintly of grilled food from somewhere uphill, but the tone was different now. Quieter. "A few of us asked Maggie for the easement paperwork," he said. "She said it is complicated." I nodded. "It is not complicated. It is either filed or it is not." He exhaled slowly, looking past me toward the dock. "Some neighbors are concerned about liability if someone gets hurt down there." Liability. That word again. I walked him to the shoreline and pointed to the service panel. "Every amp of electricity and every lift mechanism is tied to my meter," I explained. "If someone uses it without authorization, the liability does not shift uphill. It stays here." He stared at the water for a moment, then back at the ridge. "So if the dock stays closed?" "The lake remains," I said evenly, "just without infrastructure access." That night, The HOA sent another email, softer in tone. They announced a temporary pause on fines pending legal clarification. The folding table disappeared from the ridge. The pontoon remained tied to a trailer in someone's driveway, idle and unused. I stood at my shoreline as dusk settled, the sky fading into muted orange over still water. The laminated compliance notice fluttered lightly at the dock entrance, untouched. They had tried pressure, narrative, and financial threat. All of it dissolved the moment documentation entered the conversation. For the first time since I moved in, the Hill was quiet. Not because they agreed, because they were recalculating. And recalculation means they finally understand the difference between assumption and ownership. The final shift did not come with a dramatic announcement. It came with an email sent at 7:30 on a quiet Tuesday morning while mist still hovered low over the water. The subject line read Board Resolution Update. I stood at the edge of my dock as I opened it, bare feet resting on cool planks, listening to the soft rhythmic knock of water against pilings. The message was brief. After review of certified county documentation and consultation with legal counsel, Willow Creek Estates acknowledged that no recorded easement or community access right existed across Parcel 17B. All prior notices and proposed fines were withdrawn effective immediately. The HOA would pursue alternative options for future lake access consistent with applicable law. That was it. No apology. No admission beyond the necessary language. Just recalibration in black and white. I exhaled slowly, the air crisp and clean, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and cedar. Up on the ridge, garage doors opened in their usual sequence. Sprinklers ticked on. Life resumed its suburban rhythm, but something subtle had changed. Around mid-morning, Maggie walked down alone. No clipboard this time. No board members flanking her shoulders. Just quiet steps on gravel and the sound of wind moving lightly through trees. She stopped a few feet from the laminated compliance notice still posted at the dock entrance. We are exploring the purchase of a small shoreline parcel on the east side of the subdivision, she said evenly, eyes on the water rather than on me. It may take time. I nodded once. Ownership usually does. She glanced at the service panel, then back at the lake. The brass key rested in my pocket, heavier now in meaning than in weight. There was confusion, she added, choosing the word carefully. Assumptions were made. I did not correct her. Assumptions had indeed been made. They just had not survived documentation. She turned to leave, pausing briefly as if considering one more statement, then decided against it. The gravel crunched under her shoes as she walked back uphill, smaller somehow without the crowd behind her. By late afternoon, the pontoon trailer was gone from the driveway it had occupied for weeks. Kayaks rested against garage walls instead of my grass. The laminated sign had been removed quietly by someone during the night. I unlocked the service panel one more time and ran a final systems check, not because I needed to, but because routine feels different when it is uninterrupted. The breaker lights glowed steady green. The lift motors responded smoothly. Everything worked exactly as it had before they tried to redefine it. As the sun dipped lower, turning the surface of the lake into molten copper, I sat at the edge of the dock and let my feet hover just above the water. The hill behind me was quiet, no longer watching for a reaction. The shoreline curve I bought for peace finally felt like mine again. They had tried narrative. They had tried pressure. They had tried financial threat. In the end, none of it outweighed recorded rights and anchored infrastructure. The lake never raised its voice. Neither did I, because ownership does not need to shout when it is written, filed, and bolted into the ground. And as the last light faded across the water, the only thing left moving was the current, following lines that had always been there.